A girl accidentally jumped into a small puddle and was suddenly transported back in time to ancient China. When she opened her eyes, she saw a group of officials dressed in traditional garb and surrounded by ancient artifacts. But in reality, the ministers were in the middle of a ritual, praying for rain. The emperor, seeing her appear in the middle of the sacred altar, believed she was a bad omen and immediately ordered her execution. The girl thought it was all some kind of prank, until she saw that the weapons were real and the threat was serious. In a panic, she claimed to be a divine messenger from the heavens who had the ability to summon rain. Fortunately, her obsession with period dramas paid off. She mimicked the way characters in those shows prayed for rain. Surprisingly, the ministers believed her act and began to kneel and pray along with her. But when they looked up again, the mysterious girl had vanished. She had secretly changed into a minister's robe and was attempting to escape the palace. However, she was caught when she bent down to retrieve her smartphone. Guards seized her and brought her back before the emperor. Holding the phone, the emperor demanded to know why she had turned off the rain, clearly confusing the weather forecast on the screen with a divine tool. The girl quickly explained that it was just a weather app. Intrigued, the emperor fiddled with the phone and accidentally activated the camera, which frightened him to death. But when he picked it up again, the screen had gone dark. The battery had died. The phone ran out of power, she said. The emperor grew frustrated and asked her to speak in words he could actually understand. One of the officials suggested cutting off one of her arms to teach her a lesson. The emperor thought it was a great idea and was about to give the order. In desperation, the girl shouted, "Don't kill me. I'm like Baidu, I know everything. I'm from the future." She claimed her greatest skill was mathematics. That got the emperor's attention, as he happened to be passionate about math. He presented her with a notoriously difficult math problem from his era, giving her 2 days to solve it. To her surprise, it turned out to be a simplified version of the Pythagorean theorem. She scribbled the answer on paper in under a minute. The emperor was stunned. No one in the entire empire had managed to solve the problem, and she had done it effortlessly. Impressed, the emperor not only spared her life but appointed her as his personal math tutor. He even promised that when it rained again, he would allow her to return to her own time. So, the girl took on the role of teacher, starting with the basics like 1 + 2 = 2. Surprisingly, the emperor was a motivated student. Even during morning court sessions, he would sneak in time to practice formulas. After some time, the emperor took his midterm exam. The girl playfully flicked his forehead, forgetting her place. This angered the emperor, and a sword was immediately placed at her neck. Just as she thought her life was over, the emperor burst out laughing. He had been joking all along. At that moment, the empress entered the room, and both the girl and the emperor quickly resumed a serious demeanor, pretending to study. When the girl looked up and saw the empress, she was stunned. It was her best friend from the modern world. Unable to contain her surprise, she shouted, "I've been looking everywhere for you." Realizing her slip, she quickly composed herself and addressed her properly, "Your Majesty." That night, as the emperor dined, the girl's stomach growled loudly. Amused, the emperor dismissed the servants and offered to feed her himself, but once again it was all in jest. Annoyed, she boasted that she had eaten far better food in her own time. Determined to prove it, she ran to the kitchen and whipped up a bowl of modern spicy rice noodles. The emperor took one bite and was blown away by the flavor. He couldn't stop eating. However, the next day he had terrible diarrhea. His eyes turned red from the strain, and in a misguided attempt to treat it, he slapped a cold patch on his knee. The girl told him he was doing it all wrong. "You have to treat your stomach, not your knee." Impressed by her medical knowledge, the emperor brought her to the royal medical hall and asked her to teach the imperial physicians. She even helped them produce several books on anatomy and medicine. That evening, the emperor and the girl, Danbai, were playing soccer. The emperor still hadn't fully recovered from his bout of diarrhea, so he awkwardly waddled around while they played. During the game, the two fell to the ground, and the emperor accidentally bumped into Danbai's chest. Realizing the truth, he was stunned. She was indeed a woman. Quick-thinking Danbai didn't panic. She swiftly pulled out an orange from her robes and stuffed it into her chest to cover up the moment. The emperor, surprised by the strange move, didn't question further. Meanwhile, The empress had long wished for a son. In secret, she drugged the emperor's food to help make that happen. But on this particular day, the emperor didn't have an appetite, so Danbai happily devoured the meal instead. That night, the empress arrived right on time, ready to seduce the emperor. But just as things were escalating, a flustered and flushed Danbai came running out of the side room. The emperor quickly wrapped his arms around her. Seeing that her plan had failed, the empress had no choice but to leave in disappointment. Danbai was burning up from the effects of the drug. She instinctively asked for air conditioning, only to realize ancient palaces didn't have any. She began clinging to the emperor for relief. Since the next part of the story was deemed too dull or sensitive for viewers, it simply skipped over. Afterwards, in the middle of the night, the emperor personally escorted Danbai out of the palace. Unfortunately, a masked man witnessed this intimate scene. Not long after, Danbai was mysteriously captured. At morning court, the ministers loudly condemned her as an ill omen and demanded that she be executed by dismemberment. But the emperor defended her, saying she was useful to the country due to her expertise in mathematics. The prime minister challenged this claim. He said that if she could create a device to measure time, they would consider her valuable and spare her life. Under intense pressure from his ministers, the emperor reluctantly agreed. Danbai threw herself into the task. She studied ancient texts and worked tirelessly. Giving it her all, she eventually came up with an idea. Back at the palace, the emperor missed her deeply. He lay on the ground listlessly, not even interested in his favorite treats. Suddenly, it began to rain. As the drops fell on his face, he remembered. Whenever it rained, Danbai could return to the modern world through the puddle. Panicked, the emperor rushed out to find her. Meanwhile, Danbai stood beside the puddle, one foot already dipped in. This same puddle had been the gateway that brought her here. From being a clueless math failure in the modern world, she had become a brilliant scholar in the ancient one, even serving as the emperor's math teacher. But despite her achievements, the ministers still viewed her as unlucky and threatened her with execution unless she completed a working time-measuring device. Now, as rain poured from the sky, she had the perfect chance to go home. But she didn't. She realized she had fallen in love with the emperor. At the same time, the emperor arrived, as if sensing her thoughts. Danbai checked the water clock she had made. It wasn't accurate. She had based it on modern class periods, with a full bucket representing 40 minutes, but the measurements were off. Panic set in. She feared the ministers would have her torn apart. Tearfully, she clung to the emperor. His heart ached as he embraced her tightly. Though Danbai seemed emotional, she had already made up her mind. That final hug was a silent farewell. The emperor's trusted bodyguard escorted her out of the city to ensure her safety. What the emperor didn't know was that this guard had already been bribed by the ministers. His real mission was to assassinate Danbai. In the quiet forest, the bodyguard drew a hidden blade and thrust it toward her. But it wasn't aimed at her. It was used to kill an approaching assassin. More enemies quickly followed. The bodyguard told Danbai to get on a horse and escape. Danbai, ever resourceful and grateful, gifted the bodyguard a utility knife and wished him good luck before riding off into the unknown. The ministers, noticing the English words on Danbai's clothing, accused her of being a spy sent by a foreign enemy. The emperor, refusing to accept the accusation without proof, he mounted his red steed and rode off in pursuit of Danbai. Meanwhile, Danbai, who had no idea how to ride a horse, was quickly losing control. In a moment of panic, she suddenly remembered a song she often sang at karaoke back in the modern world. Miraculously, the rhythm calmed her and helped her stay upright. The emperor caught up to her, and instead of confrontation, Danbai greeted him with a stream of playful chatter. It turned out they had actually planned to meet here all along. That night, the two of them stargazed and admired the moon together. The next morning, while washing her face, Danbai discovered a blockage in her time-measuring device. In that moment, she realized why her earlier calculations had been off. The two of them rushed back to the palace, where she cleaned out the device. Sure enough, it finally worked accurately. Now that the ministers had seen Danbai's true talent, they no longer treated her with hostility. In fact, they even suggested the emperor appoint her to an official position. After bathing and changing, Danbai donned a beautiful dress at last. No more stuffy male disguises. Curious, she asked the palace maids what her new title would be. To her shock, it was Consort Huayi. What was Huayi? The phrase sounded romantic, but it was short for wedding night flower and leaf, meaning she was to become the emperor's concubine. The revelation stunned her. Panicked, she tried to escape. But in the end, the emperor caught her. He tossed her onto the bed, and Danbai thought he was about to force himself on her. She instinctively pulled out her utility knife, the same one she used for crafts back home. But the emperor didn't hurt her. He simply gave her a gentle embrace. He told her he had known all along that she was a woman. It turned out he wasn't just a ruler, he was a warm-hearted man. Later that evening, Danbai went to meet the Empress Dowager. The moment she saw her, she was stunned. The woman looked exactly like her real mother. Overcome with emotion after so long away from home, she broke down crying. The Empress Dowager was confused but moved by her tears. Unable to hide her longing any longer, Danbai went to the emperor and said she had to leave, to go back and find her mother. The emperor pleaded with her to stay, but Danbai was firm. Even though it broke her heart to leave him, she had made her choice. Frustrated and heartbroken, the emperor gave in and said, "Fine. Do whatever you want." After he left, a masked figure appeared, knocked Danbai unconscious, and stabbed her. The attacker poured gunpowder over her and set the area on fire, intending to blow her up. People rushed to put out the fire, and the emperor arrived just in time. Risking his own life, he ran through a side entrance and rescued Danbai from the flames. After the incident, the emperor finally realized something. Danbai didn't belong in this world. No matter how hard he tried to keep her by his side, she would always be in danger. So, he made the hardest decision of all. With Danbai in his arms, he mounted a white horse and personally escorted her out of the city. At the shore, he carried her to the water, gave her one last tender kiss, and gently placed her into the sea. The next second, Danbai emerged from a puddle, just like how she had first arrived in the past. It all felt like a dream. But how did it begin? That morning, before everything happened, Danbai had said goodbye to her mother and headed to school. It was the day of her college entrance exam. Nervous and overwhelmed, she didn't want to face reality. While walking to school, she stepped into a puddle, only to find herself transported back to ancient times. Now back in her own world, she was shocked to realize that only about a minute had passed since her disappearance. Everything was still in place. She grabbed her backpack and ran to school, arriving just in time. To her surprise, the test questions were all based on her experiences with the emperor. She answered everything with ease. After the exam, she returned home and shared a big, emotional hug with her mother. The next day on her way to school, it began to rain again. Just then, someone held an umbrella over her. She turned her head and saw the emperor from ancient times standing right there beside her. They smiled at each other. A perfect ending. This episode ends here. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and drop a heart if you love the series.
Footsteps fade, the echoes call, 1,000 dreams begin to fall, and it's over, it's over. The curtain's drawn, the story fades, but the feeling's strong.
Korean Netflix, like, comment, and subscribe.